Why are the most delicious sauces filled with crap? Hi, I'm Nick, former medical doctor turned soul doctor, and having healed from my lifelong asthma and suicidal depression. And this is my little rumble rants for right now. Because I love sauces. I love putting sauces on everything, adding flavor, adding boldness, adding texture. And I'm realizing that so many sauces are filled with so much crap, so many fillers, so much artificial stuff, so much processed stuff. And I want to be able to use sauces. I want to be able to buy amazing sauces. And sauces cost dollars to lots of money. And even the lots of money sauces, I can never tell if they're really good. And so one of the things I'm going to put out here now is if you're listening to this and you've got in the comments amazing sauces, amazing sauce companies, amazing people who are already interested in the same thing I am, please put them in there. Or if you're looking to create sauces, small batches, all this stuff, fantastic. There's a part of me that's like, I want to make some small batch sauces. I want to talk to my beloved because she makes amazing, like, homemade Caesars and other things like that. Whenever she can make a sauce, 1,000 times better. But it's just one of those few and far between, storage, all that stuff. And I do recognize too, because I had a friend who works in the mushroom industry and he made this mushroom jerky that tasted delicious, and then he wanted to sell it in the stores. And every single great ingredient they had, they're like, you got to reformulate this because we're going to take at least 50% or more. You've got to get the cost down. So the cost is this, da 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 da. And they're like, yeah, we went from sea salt to crap, from great sugars to crap sugars and all that stuff. And I can see that in all the companies that built up really good reputations and then eventually exited, the formulations kept changing. And the scientists are all there to say, how can we maintain the taste so that whoever's been hooked on us is going to stay hooked on us while also decreasing the costs? And knowing that the quality of it is going down. And I say the quality in the sense of the wholeness of it, because part of it is I want the wholeness of sauces. And I get it as a society, even as myself. We keep trying to break things down to components. We keep looking for the cheat code. We're looking for the silver bullet, looking for the easy way. And it's almost baked into our patterns, my patterns at least. This North American pattern where it's like, I can find a shortcut. And part of it is baked into the money systems. Like, the person who's doing the best, holistic farming and living is not the one who's the rich billionaire on Wall Street who's just figured out how to game the system. And the more I learn about the system, I'm reading Jekyll Island right now, or The Creature of Jekyll Island, or something else like that, the Federal Reserve and everything else like that, the more I realize how rigged the system is. We want to get big enough so that we can never fail because we're going to get bailed out. And it's the little guys that are going to fail, and no one's there to bail them out. Like, no one's there to bail out the individual taxpayer, homeowner, or anything else like that. It's like, you screwed up. But if you can own, 1,000,000 homes and you can say it's going to break the economy, then you will get bailed out. It's like, great, the system just keeps going. And so for the food side of things, we have broken it down so much into, calories, a calorie, or proteins, a protein, all this stuff, broken down the nutritional content, broken down into these things are all equivalent, rather than realizing there's an energy about everything. There really is an energy about things. Water, especially, one of the things that's like, there's so many different sources of water, whether it's spring water, whether it's municipal water, whether it's recycled water. And then we've added things and toxins like fluoride into water, chlorine into water, just to prevent the possibility, theoretically, of illness, but also introducing this toxin. And I was so grateful when I was over in the Puna district in Hawaii, and everyone's got their own rainwater catchments. And it's because they don't have a centralized system in that way. But that's the beauty of not having a centralized system, is everyone has to be responsible for their own water that they collect and then filter, and then they get to decide what they filter. And the systems, because there's a scale, everyone's expected, the cost of all of it is much lower. And you can personalize it. And how do we incorporate more of that? And so for the food and the sauces, how do we bring ourselves back to not trying to have access to everything everywhere all at once? How do we actually value things differently? How does someone show up not just with the certifications of organic or something else like that, but rather the wholeness of the farmer's market, where it's like there's a direct connection between the producer and the consumer? And that's the thing as well, when I learned first about, when they first started canning foods after, I can't remember if it's World War I or World War II, there's so many deaths from this canned food because it separated the person producing it from the person receiving it, where they're like, we can put cheaper and cheaper stuff into here and see how far we can go before we get caught, and we'll make bigger profit margins. And if the name of the game is just profit margins, then this is going to continue. And if we focus on that solely as a sign of success, this is going to continue. And how do we bring the holistic part of it in? How do we bring the human part of it in? And part of my own work, I know, is bring consciousness into things, is bring as much wholeness even into the things that I'm doing, while also recognizing the way that I'm going to do it is I'm not responsible for everything. I've got to have a team. I've got to delegate. I've got to have connections. I've got to have other people play their parts. And even in the sauce world, it's the same thing. It's like, I don't expect everyone to use this all the time. I can't fulfill everyone's needs. But if I have someone I know who's producing great stuff, I'd love to highlight them. I'd love to partake in their stuff. And then as well, I'm going to invite my beloved and others to say, how do you guys create better, more sustainable, more fun, more whole foods? Because I think we are missing that. And this is me talking actually at the tail end of an 8-day fast. So it's like, how do we bring more goodness? Because as I introduce foods back in, I'm going to try to be a little bit more careful, really removing the dairy, the sugar, the gluten, and bring in more the meats and the veggies first. And then I'd love to have had or have access to amazing sauces. And I'm going to ask my beloved for that, so that I can have some introduction to flavor that's actually more nourishing. Nourishing flavors as well. Nourishing flavors. And it's funny because as a child, you know, we had Oreos, we had all the stuff, but it was a different formulation. And as much as they're approximating the formulation, there's part of my brain that's still addicted. I love like Oreo bobas and all that stuff. There's also a part that realizes it's not the same thing. And in not being the same thing, I feel much worse after I consume it than I used to. And all of these things, how do we produce more and more? Because, you know, there's real raw sugarcane juice, and then there is much more refined cane sugar, and then there's super refined white sugar, and then there's even more refined kind of glucose syrups and all that stuff. How do we realize that they're not all the same thing? How do we remember? And how do we realize that it's all about cost right now? And I'd like to go back to a place where we're able to differentiate better some amazing things. And it's about this kind of crowdsourcing. How do we talk to each other, communicate with each other, bring back and actually notice who's producing it is producing it with love, with integrity, with wholeness, and willing to stand beside and behind what they're producing. So if you're like me and you love sauces, really good mayonnaise, really good Caesars, really good ranch, really good barbecue sauce, really good ketchups, really good sriracha, all that stuff, then please work with me to create a world where there's better sauces so we can actually really enjoy the fullness of flavors. And I was inspired by this because I just listened to the Jack Mahler show, and he was saying he likes putting Primal Kitchen ketchup on his steaks. And I was like, that's fantastic that you're willing to admit that you love sauces as well. That's fantastic that you're using better sauces. And even then, I don't know how good those sauces are. I know they're expensive relative to other sauces. And I'm realizing now it's worth it to pay the money for sauces that are good. It's worth it to have fresher sauces. And how do we do that? Hi, I'm Nick. Ciao for now.